Never underestimate those who you scar, because karma, karma, karma come back to you hard. This is Just Forget About It. Episode 29, Spiritual Law. So they say love is the highest vibration. And this to me is true. I love love. I'm a Libra, so I'm a hopeless romantic. I just had to put that in there. Love, however, is a term that can shapeshift and take on different meanings, but depending on how this was introduced to you or lack thereof, which is really unfortunate for a lot of us. Spiritual law, to me, consists of more elements of principles and integrity than of imagery and inference. And inference is implications, implying things that are suggested but not directly said. And before we get to all this heavy, shout out to my little upgrades. Let me know if y'all like the blue. I'm on my true blue. We changed the setup a little bit. I hope you guys like it. Write a little comment if y'all like the blue. You know, I'm trying to change it from the pink and green. Sorry, that's my ADHD. Back to spiritual law. Now, what I was saying is spiritual law consists more of elements that are about principle and integrity than of imagery and inference. This sometimes could be as simple as having a conversation with a friend, family member, or even an associate. And it's like, this person is like, yeah, because of X, Y, and Z. And if X, Y, and Z happens, I don't have the time, tolerance for it. And I would X, Y, Z. So X, Y, Z at that point is said integral principle, right? And that would be my X, Y, Z. And this is the said solution or conclusion, right? So this can be any situation. I don't have one handy, but that's why the acronym XYZ. But to get back to spiritual law, I love having these conversations with people because this is the perfect and most solid means to truly see the spiritual fluidity of this person or otherwise. So once this non-tolerable factor presents itself in a circumstance that the said person voluntarily said they would X, Y, or Z, I like to sit back and observe. Because a person's natural selection is their most instinctive one. So understand that whatever they choose without pressure is the most accurate. And if it is contradictory of what you previously outlined without acknowledgement of you noticing these said changes, conflicting with your said XYZ principles or integral basis, it's nothing much I or anyone else can do. And let's not play the game of, I don't have to explain myself to people, because that is correct. But you didn't have to explain yourself when you set XYZ standards either. And more than likely, no one asked about it. So keep it in its proper perspective. You voluntarily spoke about principles that you didn't stand on. And now, when the time comes for you to stand on those principles, null is the word, null is it, isn't taking the time to honor or even acknowledge the misalignment, this is my misalignment gesture. The misalignment with your spoken word versus your free will, there isn't much others can do without self-sacrificing. And this is spiritual law. And since a lot of us are getting back to this, meaning spirituality, it's important we understand that words, thoughts, actions should run parallel to one another as often as possible to keep our spirit man intact and operating in the highest vibration of love. Now, don't get me wrong. It definitely happens that the only vibration from time to time we can operate on or from is suppression. Especially depending on where you're from, all those things matter. And this can often creep silently in our lives and remain indefinitely if we don't take care or take the time to trace back things we have said in our voluntarily behavior shortly after that did not align or reflect your spoken words of principle. A good checkpoint would be asking yourself, am I honoring the principles and values I set forth verbally to myself in conversation and fellowship? If not, what am I doing when these misalignments occur? What is my behavior like? My mindset? Maybe 2 or 3 episodes ago in Labyrinth Entrapments, I discussed people love blaming things outside of themselves. This is a perfect example when we are misaligning with things that we have voluntarily pointed out to people as things that, as principles we don't accept. But you make exceptions to the rules when it comes to things that seem easily undetectable. Within the vibration of suppression and misalignment, we may experience many qualities parallel of depression. So you see suppression, pression, depression, pression. Just saying. And within those, it's minimizing ourselves, overcompensating ourselves, gossiping. And I mean excessively, because don't get me wrong, I like a good gossip. It's the way of the world. Doesn't mean it's good, but everything good in moderation. But sadness, resentment, jealousy, envy, all of the low vibrational gang is there. They're all there. But is this where you want to be or stay? Versus the vibration of love that is parallel to divinity, the highest of heights. Qualities like honesty with self, willingness to understand. Sometimes it's just you that caused the issue, and you can change the result should you be given another opportunity to show and improve. Grace, patience, self-awareness. Now, these are no holy guide of expectations. No, we don't have expectations. Expectations is the recipe for disaster. I think a lot of us miss this and miss, separating the intentions and the expectations of this act of honoring our spiritual law within our spirit man. And I say for reasons they may vary, but lack of acknowledgement to spiritual transgressions are very dangerous to ignore. Very, very dangerous to ignore. Beyond misaligning our integrity, we are ultimately betraying ourselves. It is within spiritual law, and it is spiritual law, to reap what we sow. So for a lot of us, if we aren't physically harming another person, we feel like we aren't causing any negativity in the world. And this is simply not true. And the T is, we often miss that spirit is often the things unseen but felt. So you aren't causing any physical or bodily harm on people, right? That you don't align with. But you're consistently and constantly speaking negative about this said person. Word curses, hexes, and even thoughts. Now, I'm not saying you'll never have a negative thought about someone. Now, that's expectations. I mean ruminating. You going back there and you're not doing anything to solve it. You're just allowing that hatred to eat you alive. Every time, like, let me tell you, they had their hand like this, girl. You wilding out. Your spirit is misaligned and you are worried about the wrong things. We've all been there. I go there maybe several times throughout the month. But I bring myself back. But I digress from what I have on here. And I feel like instead of addressing this misaligning action and these thoughts and behaviors, we often feed it a little more. We feed it a little more by doing more of these things, more gossiping, more, coming up with stories or possibilities of what the person's intent could be because you don't like them and they look this way when you said this word. And then we attempt to get close to these people to gain power over them or to extort them. And it is from information that oftentimes these people will voluntarily give, but under the impression of false pretenses. They feel that they're really building with you. And instead of you dealing with that misalignment, you are leading a person into deception for an illusion of control. Now, that might have sounded like a lot, but those who are getting themselves spiritually planted and aligned understand exactly what I mean. And it is a transgression not only against that person you are attempting to minimize, but again, against yourself. It is important to know we are not perfect and we will fall weak to these spiritual misalignments. I was just saying that for our spirit man. But it is what we do when we know this is occurring.